The next topic, negotiation. And here is the outline. So let's first give a definition of negotiation. Negotiation is something that we are very familiar with. Heard about negotiation all the time. There will be negotiation between companies, between departments within the companies, between the individuals, like the salary negotiation between you and your boss. If you want to have a pay raise, that's negotiation. And also when countries try to resolve some conflict, they also resort to negotiation. So negotiation is just an interpersonal decision-making process that is necessary when objectives cannot be achieved single-handedly. So it's a joint decision to reconcile different preferences. So usually, it's only necessary to have a negotiation when these two different parties or multiple parties have different preferences. If their preferences are completely well aligned, then you can just have someone to make the decision for you. There's no conflict, then it's not necessary to have a negotiation. So the only scenario that negotiation is needed is you have different and conflicting sometimes preferences. Negotiation create value through agreements that make both parties better off than they were without an agreement. So a quite important feature of negotiation is that it can create value, right? So if you learn nothing about negotiation, only one thing, I would like you to keep the word value creation in your mind, because a lot of people, when they come to the negotiation table, I mean, they have this mindset they need to beat the other party in order to be the winner so that they can get the value from this negotiation table. Well, that's, in most cases, that's not the case, right? So you are able to create value by understanding each other's needs. So this value is not just material or monetary value, so-called economic value. It could also be relational and reputational value, right? So when we talk about relational and reputational value, it's focused on the long-term returns. So think about the repeated prisoner dilemma. Economic value, maybe you just consider the material gain in the current period, but relational and reputational value could bring you a higher gain in the long run, right? So sometimes it is actually beneficial for you to sacrifice some of the benefit from these times of negotiation so that you have the reputation, so that the same partner or negotiator company that you are negotiating and other companies would come to you to try to have this value creation, right? So keep this in mind. Value creation is a key on the negotiation table, and also this value does not only refers to monetary or economic value, it also refers to reputational and relational value. So negotiation involves both communication and persuasion. So most people would consider persuasion as the core of negotiation process. Well, it is quite important to be persuasive because you need to convince others to willingly accept your proposal, okay? So some of the persuasion techniques or tactics that we have discussed are quite useful in negotiation. But communication, I would argue, is more important, right? It's no less important, at least, because you should always try to discover opportunities for value creation. If you have fixed mindset, just based on the information you have before the negotiation start, you will stop trying to discover opportunities for further value creation, right? So that is a common negotiation mistake. So you try to influence the beginner negotiators, they try to influence, say that this is the bad deal, you should accept this, otherwise, I will walk away, you will never get a better offer. That's just trying to influence, but they forget, influencing again is very important, but they forget to try to get more information to understand the preferences and the needs of the other party so that they can create more value. Right? So negotiation is an information game. Those who know how to obtain information perform better than those who just stick to what they already know, right? Meaning that they have fixed mindset. So there are two types of negotiation. The first one is a distributive negotiation. This focuses on how negotiators divide the resources or divide the pie. So it focuses on claiming value of a fixed pie. It's just usually just one issue that you are discussing or negotiating. They basically do not negotiating the price of selling the product or buying the product. So you focus on slicing the pie. While integrative negotiation, it relies on how negotiators create the resources that will ultimately be divided. So the focus will be creating value. Usually it has multiple issues, and the focus will be expanding the pie. Integrative negotiation also involves claiming value proportion and the use of distributive tactics. So distributive negotiation may be considered as the foundation of negotiation, right? But still, even if you are in the distributive negotiation, it could still create value for both of these two parties, right? Most negotiation will involve both value creation and the value division. So your goal in negotiation is to realize all potential opportunities of value creation. I put it as the first point because it's the most important point, right? If you have achieved the first goal, then you can consider try to claim the largest possible slice of the created value without hurting the long-term relationship, right? So again, keep in mind that the long-term relationships, they are also values, right? So you should also consider what is the maximum value that you could claim in the long run. Do not focus too much on this time if it's long-term relationship, or it could influence your reputation among other potential negotiators. So here is actually this yin-yang graph demonstrating this philosophy of the Chinese philosophy, but it's also a good illustration of this value creation and value division process, because this cannot clearly separate from each other. Value creation at the same time, you need to divide the value created. And when you try to divide the value, you also keep in mind that you should try to expand the pie, right? So here is just a graphical illustration. Value creation is just expanding the pie. Value division is just determining which party get how much proportion of the pie. So now here I want to show you your negotiation style. Which style do you want to assume? Do you want to play it soft on the negotiation table or play it hard? So here are some descriptions of this soft style and hard style. If you look at Donald Trump, and he has written a book on negotiation, I think this is called The Art of Deal, right? But you know that Trump, when he tried to negotiate, it's very tough. I mean, sometimes he gets what he wants, but it's good to be tough, to be hard, or whether it's good to be soft. So here are some descriptions. Soft negotiators would consider participants as friends. The goal is agreement, and they try to make concessions to cultivate the relationship. So they focus a lot on the relationship. Be soft on the problem and the people. They trust others. They change their positions easily. They make offers and they disclose their bottom line. They accept one-sided losses to reach agreement. So agreement is something that they emphasize a lot. And they search for a single answer. They want to find an offer that the other party will accept. On the other hand, if you look at the hard negotiators, they consider participants as adversaries, and the goal is victory, to win and to beat the other party. And they demand concession as a condition of the relationship. If you are not conceding to my request, then we do not have any further relationship. And they are hard on the problem and the people. They distrust others. They dig into their own position. They make threats. They mislead to what their bottom line is, and they demand one-sided gain as the price of the agreement. And also they search for a single answer, the one that they are satisfied with. Okay, so which one do you want to play? Do you want to be soft or want to be hard? I mean, most students would say it depends. Depends on the situation, right? That's a very safe answer. But the answer I want to give you is neither. You should neither trying to be hard or trying to be soft. You should be a principled negotiator instead of being soft or hard. So what do we mean by principled negotiation or principled negotiator? So the principal negotiator would consider participants as problem solvers. They come to the table, they are trying to solve a problem. the problem of value creation, how to create the maximum possible value. So the goal of the negotiation is a wise outcome reached efficiently and amicably, right? So if you are able to achieve this outcome friendly, so just do it amicably. Do not need to be hard on each other. So they separate the problem, the people from the problem. So when they identify some problem, they do not attack the other party. They just try to solve the problem. Consider, if you encounter a problem, do not say, you are generating this problem for me. You can say that, okay, I have a problem, I need your help. Or just offer that, how can I help to solve your problem, right? So that's maybe a better mindset to be a principled negotiator. So they will be soft on the people, hard on the problem, and they would proceed independent of trust, right? So if for the hard negotiator or the soft negotiator, without trust, they would just say, I will not negotiate with you. But principled negotiator, they will try to proceed and build the trust along this negotiation table. And in this process, they will focus on interest, not position. They will try to explore interest, and they avoid having a fixed bottom line. So if you have a fixed bottom line before coming to the negotiation table, that means that this is the price I will accept, this minimum price I will accept. If you put it much lower or lower than this bottom, I will walk away. I mean, this is a fixed mindset, because that means you are not open to the new information to change or to adjust this bottom line, right? And the principal negotiator will also try to invent options for mutual gain, and they develop multiple options to choose from and then decide later. Sometimes they even trade off different options, as we will see later. So here is a good illustration how principled negotiators should focus on interests, not positions. You should try to figure out what are the interests behind the positions that the other party is trying to insist on. Right? So let's just watch this video. Okay, so it's a very good example of this principled negotiation, that you should never focus on the positions, but try to discover the interest behind the positions, because the interest or the preferences behind the positions are the opportunities for you to create value and to come up with some solutions on the negotiation table. So here is maybe an interesting book for you to check. Is I don't remember his first name, maybe Christian Waltz. He was actually FBI hostage negotiator, right? So he actually tried to negotiate against some of the terrorists. And he gave several examples how you should focus on the interests behind even the terrorists, right? And that's how he was able to solve a lot of the tricky situations when he tried to negotiate with the hostage terrorists. A quite common bias in negotiation is the so-called fixed pie perception. Means that you believe the counterparty's interests are opposed to your own interest, right? But I want to tell you that all negotiations should be value creation process. It's like what we have learned in the economic principle, all trade, all voluntary trade should be beneficial to both parties, right? Because the only reason they are agreeing to a deal is because this deal would make both of them better off. So here is a really interesting video in your mind to keep in mind that negotiation is actually a value creation process, right? So now, how do we become successful on the negotiation table? I mean, the first thing is that you should get prepared, right? In order to get well prepared, you should have some assessment on each party's alternative to some agreement, to negotiate the agreement. And you should understand each party's set of interest and also the relative importance of each party's interest. So basically what you are trying to understand is your own interest, what you would accept, and not only that, but also the other party's interest and what are they likely to accept. So here is a code
from Sun Tzu Art of War, which is a very classic book on wars written by the Chinese author Sun Tzu. So basically, he was saying that it's very famous. So if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. And if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. So basically saying that you should know both you and also the other party in order to win. I mean, that also applies on the negotiation table. It's not enough to know only yourself. You also need to know the other party's interest. So now let's introduce a quite important concept in negotiation. I mean, if you study negotiation, so this is the concept, probably the most important concept. And it's called BATNA, right? And so this professor in this video clip about pumpkins actually mentioned this BATNA. So basically what you need to consider before negotiation is what to do if no agreement is reached. And this, what you need to do, is the idea of BATNA is best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Okay, so you should come up with this BATNA. And once you come up with this BATNA, you should accept any agreement superior to your BATNA on the negotiation table, because BATNA determines your bargaining power, right? If you have a better alternative, that means you can ask for a better deal. And BATNA is time sensitive. You have a BATNA in mind before coming to the negotiation table, but once you get more information from the other party, you may be able to adjust your BATNA. So you should always try to improve your BATNA, right? So basically, if you consider the decision making process of the negotiator, I mean, you try to have a negotiated agreement, right? So that's something that you need to come up with by negotiating with the other party. So that's one option after you have a negotiated agreement. And the alternative is your BATNA. So basically, this BATNA determines whether you are likely to accept the negotiated agreement or not. That determines your bargaining power, because the better BATNA you have, the more you could ask from the other party, right? So an important thing that you should always keep in mind that is you should never accept an agreement that is worse than your BATNA, because you have your BATNA there. If the deal is worse than your BATNA, you should never accept it. And a related concept to BATNA is the reservation value. So the reservation value can be also called reservation point or reservation price. It's the quantification of your BATNA, right? So suppose your best alternative of accepting a job from an IT company is to go back home, live with your parents, and find a job at McDonald's. How do you summarize this BATNA as the salary, the minimum salary, and also the benefit that you would be able to receive from the IT company? So that salary and all the other benefits summarizing as a number, that's the reservation value. So what you should do is try to beat your reservation value in negotiation. Reservation value is your walk-away point, and you should never accept a deal worse than your reservation value. Okay, so now let's just spend the last 10 minutes to talk about some of the tactics. First, in distributive negotiation, right? And then integrative negotiation. So in order to understand this negotiation tactics in distributive negotiation, we need to introduce a concept called bargaining zone. So that's basically the region between the parties' reservation point or reservation price in which a final settlement should be obtained. So this is also known as a ZOPA, the zone of positive agreement. So if you have a positive bargaining zone, right? So there's a room for your negotiation. So because that could make both parties better off. But there's also some situation that you have negative bargaining zone because there's no overlap of the reservation value of the seller and the buyer. In that case, sorry?
Come here.
Questions there? Yeah, I'll try to mute them. In case they have questions, they can unmute themselves. So if there are there is just negative bargaining zone, that means none of them will be able, I mean, it would not be able to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. So the bargaining surplus, which is the amount of the overlap between the parties' reservation point, is also called the pi. And the bargaining surplus is zero when the bargaining zone is negative. So these are abstract concepts. Let's just look at one visual example. Suppose you have the seller's reservation price and the buyer's reservation price or reservation point. So as the buyer, you will try to lower the price as low as possible. While as a seller, you will always try to push the price up.
Warren,
Yes.
could you do that with the cursor and on the
Yeah.
thing?
Thanks for the reminder. So that's again illustrate the difficulties of hybrid teaching. Right? So I'm not used
You
to
are
this.
doing very well though.
Thanks. So the sellers, right? So they will try to push the price as high as possible, while the buyers would also try to push the price as lower as possible. But in spite of doing this, any final settlements, any final price between this so-called bargaining zone should be acceptable to both parties, right? So here, this overlap between these two parties' reservation points are called bargaining surplus. So when there's a positive bargaining surplus, that means there would be mutually beneficial final agreement, right? And although you want the best deal possible, pushing the price towards your interest, but any settlement within the bargaining zone is better than walk away from the table. Now, after understanding this bargaining zone, let's just consider two things that you should consider when you need to negotiate a distributive negotiation. So basically, what you need to first understand is the first offer. You should so you should have some aspiration level. And this aspiration level would actually determine your first offer. Aspiration defines the upper limit of what you can get in a negotiation. You usually never get more than your first offer. So this is an important anchoring point, right? So there are two phenomena related to the first offer. So the first phenomena is called winner's curse, meaning that your initial generous requests that are immediately granted. So if you make the first offer and the other party immediately accept it, it is a signal that you did not ask enough, right? And the chilling effect is the other extreme. When you have this extreme proposal that causes the counterparty to be offended and walk away. I have personal experience when I was inexperienced negotiator. So I went to Thailand, right? So they asked for like 200, let's just say 200 krona. I said, how about 20? I mean, that type of negotiation might offend the other party, but luckily they were professional sellers. So they see this experience, but a situation like this might offend the other party, and that will be detrimental for this negotiation. That shows that you probably do not understand the business, right? So especially it's a serious business negotiation. I mean, you will try to avoid this chilling effect. Yes, Maurice.
With the winner's curse, doesn't that mean that also imagine I'm the person going in with a too generous request and the other party immediately accepts it? Wouldn't that mean that from a rational standpoint, the other party is also making a mistake by accepting immediately?
Yeah.
Because they would probably expect me to at least have some wiggle room and to offer it for them an even better, make it even better.
That's a great observation. And that's actually something that we will discuss. I mean, one lesson we could learn from this is never accept the first offer, right? So I do have some personal experience with the winner's curse. So my wife and I were selling a house last year. And so maybe let me write down the price that I think we've set it at 3.59 million kroners. And just after 1 week, we set this price, we noticed that another house just in the neighborhood
set the price 3.75. I mean, we are relatively new to Denmark. We don't know the Danish culture, how you should interact with the real estate agent. We were actually considering to ask the real estate agents to raise our price. But it turns out that the reaction of the real estate agent, of course, they have their incentive to have your price as low as possible to sell it fast because their commission is fixed, it's not proportional. So they do not have any incentive to increase the price. So looking back, what we were supposed to do is just to increase the price, not maybe all the way to their value, but probably to increase to another maybe 100,000 kroner. And because eventually we were able to sell it at the price, but to give you some concession, maybe allow the buyers to move in early. But this is a great lesson for me to learn because you will never be able to get more than your first offer, usually, right? So in rare case, like what I have learned that in Swedish housing market, I mean, people bid up and it could be higher than the initial value. I was actually hoping that, but it's very uncommon because this serves as the anchoring effect, right? So listing it as a higher price is also when you're not familiar with the quality of the house, people might think that if they have a better quality, there's a reason behind the high price. So winner's curse is something you try to avoid. And the cheating effect is something when you do not have a lot of information on this nature of the negotiation, you should try to avoid these extreme offers that would offend the other party. Okay, so here is an illustration of this effects on the first offer. So if your first offer is very close to your reservation price, I mean, your offer will be immediately accepted if the other party think is a good offer. But the final outcome is the worst, right? But as you increase your first offer, I mean, as it gets closer to the other party's reservation value, so this final outcome will be increased with this corresponding initial offer. But if you go past this reservation value of the other party, it can still slightly increase the final offer. But if it's too far away, too high compared to the other party's reservation value, it has this cheating effect, right? So this part is representing this anchoring effect that we have discussed before, but you should always try to get into the region where cheating effect would occur, right? So how to make the first offer? You should always try to acquire information and do not rush to make the first offer. And late first offers are more likely to lead to creative agreement that meets each party's interest. So if you do not have a lot of information, very unclear, I mean, you can wait for the other party to make the first offer, right? But at the same time, try to acquire more information. And also in the case that you have to make the first offer, you should provide justification for your offer because offers with justification would provide a stronger anchoring effect. Right? So we talked about anchoring effect, but here are some details things, some tricky things or subtlety of anchoring effect that is good for you to know, especially on the negotiation table. So one thing is that precise anchors are more potent than round numbers. So here is actually an illustration, right? So it shows this on the x-axis represent the buy it now price on eBay. On the y-axis represent the average first offer ratio. Is the offer versus the listing price. As you can see here, these round numbers usually they lead to a worse final outcome for the seller, right? So in comparison to the corresponding price offers. So what you need to do, if you are able to do it, when you try to offer this first price, you make a price precise offer. The reason why it would work is because it's considered as having more information
And also it appears more competent, right? So if you say it's, I would ask for 10,000. And people would think, oh, it's just a rough number. You just come up with that number out of nowhere. But if you say, I want to ask for 9,957. You could also do some calculation and come up with that number that make you appearing more competent and make you offer to be more likely to be accepted and making this anchoring effect to be stronger. And another type of first offer is the range offer. Instead of offering 10,000, I mean, it's actually better to say that I would ask for my salary to be in the range of 9,500 to 1,100, for example, right? So this range offer has been proven to be more effective compared to just one number, or especially one round number, okay? So for the sake of time, we'll stop here. I guess next Wednesday, we'll still need another 10 minutes to finish the discussion.